Good afternoon if you're on the East Coast. Good morning if you're on the West Coast. And if you're in Hawaii, enjoy the beach. My name is Dan Fishman. I am the executive director of the People for Liberty. And we are on the Liberty Lunch Power Hour. Our guest today is going to be Nickolas Wildstar. Nick's going to be here any minute now. I want to talk a little bit, though, about the fact that Nick is actually our first repeat guest on the Liberty Lunch Power Hour. And that's awesome because we have good news. And I don't want to spoil it too much, but let me recap the story a little bit. A week ago, we had, actually a week ago Friday, so 10 days ago now, we had Nick on the air where he was talking about the scenario that he was in where he had been sentenced to 6 years in jail for the misdemeanor crime of recording himself in a courtroom. However, and he'll explain this when we get into it, where he recorded himself wasn't an actual courtroom. It was a mock room designed to, those of you who have had the misfortune to go through the judicial system know that it's so incredibly crowded now that a lot of times we have scenarios where people are, they have alternatives to court that aren't actually court. Like you can have a magistrate who will administer your traffic court cases, or a person who there's other alternatives to court. So Nickolas Wildstar was in a court alternative where there was no court stenographer, no recordings of what were going on, and so he wanted to have a record of what actually happened, so he recorded himself. And there is a California law that says it is legal to record any public official in their place of business, which would include, of course, a judge. Now, the person who actually administered this case wasn't overseeing a court. So, and Nickolas had to sign a thing saying, do you accept that even though this is not a court, the ruling here will be final? And he actually didn't sign that either. So he's in the scenario where he's recording it so that he can have a record of what happened. Because if you've had a bad experience with the judicial system, with law enforcement, you know that one of the critical things is that the system is stacked against you, especially if you're defending yourself, especially if you are a person who is known to the police, as most libertarian activists are. If you're in that scenario, you want to have a record of what's happened. And so Nick recording himself is not according to California law, is that illegal, because he wasn't in a court. However, they were able to bring a charge saying that, well, it was a court, even though it wasn't supposed to be a court, and that he was breaking the law in that respect. He had a trial where he was found guilty, and they threw the book at him to essentially, and those of you who know how the system works, a lot of times they will give you the heaviest possible sentence and then try to plea you down to stop you from appealing to accept a lighter sentence. Nickolas wasn't going to do that. He was going to fight. He's still going to fight, and he's still going to appeal, because it's a critical thing for all of us that if you are taken into a court, if you're taken to a system where you are going to be judged, you have the right to a recording of those proceedings. And, the Supreme Court has held many times that photography is not a crime. Taping a police officer is not a crime. Your ability to make a recording of something that's happening to you should be defended under the First Amendment. In this case, though, Nickolas was not allowed to do that, and it ended up being, a real hardship for him and his family. He was held for 10 days before his trial, which of course is just, brutal. And then he ends up having to fight, the expenses to his family, all that stuff. We set up a Gofundme page. His wife set up a Gofundme page. They raised some money to defer some of those expenses. However, in the long run, when the sentencing has been commuted somewhat, and I'll let Nickolas talk about that when he gets on and sort of share the good news. But it's a fight that we can't let the government walk out of this. We can't let them get away with the fact that they did something wrong, and now they're trying to say, oh, well, you know what? Maybe we did something wrong. Maybe we can sweep it under the mud if we do this one thing. So without further ado, let me bring in the man of the hour. Hey, Nick, how's it going?
Wonderful.
Dude, that's an
Fishman, how are you?
outstanding background.
What's that?
I said that's an outstanding background.
All right.
I'm
moving on to the next phase, you know?
Well, that's good, but it's not the next phase. So I gave people a little bit of a highlight that said essentially your sentence has been reduced, right? That you are not going to, you're not currently being scheduled to go to jail. However, you are still guilty in the eyes of the law, and they're going to sentence you to community service, which, I mean, to a certain extent, I think that's kind of crazy to sentence you to community service because, I mean, that's like sentencing a bird to fly, right? Birds already fly. You're already doing community service. It's, yeah, exactly. But that's fine. The government wants to say, okay, that's what we're doing. But is it, so I want to ask now, is it over for you, or do you feel like there's a need to still fight? Are you going to appeal this sentence?
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, I have a need to make sure that justice is served and that I am vindicated, you know? With this situation in particular, if I were to appeal it and actually be victorious in that appeal, well, I am going to appeal it, but if I were to actually be victorious at it, my situation would become case law to where, you know, anyone in the state of California that should happen to incur the same thing to where you were recording a law official and am charged for it, then they'll be able to use my case as defense against that. So I definitely want to make sure I do win that because it's certainly going to be a win for all of we the people.
Definitely for everybody. Now I tried to explain a little bit of what was going on beforehand, but just to follow up, the place where you were recording wasn't a straight up, it wasn't a court, right? It's not an official court sort of thing. It's like I don't want to say a temporary court.
That's essentially what it is, pretty much. I mean, because you do have a judicial officer there, which is a commissioner. Commissioners are not judges, so technically when they are on the bench, they're just practicing being a judge. So you have the right to object to that commissioner, you know, presiding over your case and actually have a real judge appointed to it. So these traffic citations that I had appeared in court for in September of 2018, they were in those temporary courts, as you said, and the commissioner presided over them. So I was really just acting within my rights to object them overseeing, you know, what was happening.
So you objected. In fact, they give you a piece of paper too saying you acknowledge this isn't a real court.
Exactly. So, yes. Every person that goes into the courtroom is given this list of guidelines, and I just read through them. Lots of people don't, you know, and I'm like, hey, this is a perk here. Why not just say I object and actually wait this out to, you know, I do have my jury trial, you know?
Yep.
And that's the way it's supposed to work.
And if you hadn't recorded what was going on there, there would have been no record of what actually happened because the official record taking, it wasn't like a normal court where there are cameras that are being run by the court and there's a stenographer who records every word that's said and everything like that. This is a different scenario in terms of what's going on.
Yes. Well, traffic courts in California, there is no court reporter. So there is no stenographer. There aren't any video cameras in any of the courtrooms. So the only thing I guess you can rely on is the audio equipment and or possibly a transcript being made from that. But since there is no stenographer there, no court reporter, you're just reliant upon all documentation of activity to be done by that supposed audio recording. Other than that, everything that's happening is technically off the record.
And to me, it's a crazy thing. I think about back to one of the things that Gary Johnson said when he was running for president. He said, the greatest device in our lives right now for social justice, for criminal justice reform, that's done more for law enforcement than anything else, is the cell phone. The fact that you can record everything that's happened. So there's no dispute. And I think about, we think about all the cases that, we don't know what would have happened to George Floyd if somebody hadn't been recording that, right? I mean, it would have been another death of somebody who was resisting arrest, and the police would have said it was justified.
Exactly.
All these other scenarios. And so there should never be a scenario in which government says, oh, you know what? That's here, you can't record yourself. Here, we don't want there to be any recordings. Here, we want everything to be in secret, because justice isn't supposed to be secret.
And not at all. If you would think in our courthouses, especially, we wouldn't want there to be any secret activity happening. I mean, if we don't want it happening in our state legislator's office, or in the governor's office, even this guy, then we want to make sure that they're being completely transparent in their activity. Unfortunately, that's not happening in our courtrooms all throughout the state and throughout the country as well. It's up to we, the people, to hold them accountable. That's exactly what I was doing. I mean, recording the judge presiding over my own court cases, not the entire courtroom and all court activity. It was just my own case. So recording that is no different than if I was pulled over by a police officer during a traffic stop, or at a DUI checkpoint, or any other type of interaction with a public official. And it's sad that, again, I'm being censored. So that should be a red flag to everybody out there as to why they're doing their best to make sure that I'm silenced.
Well, hopefully we're doing a little bit to fight against that by pushing this out there to everybody. One of the things that I want to remind everybody about is that there is right now a GoFundMe. I'm going to put it up on the screen. Where is it? Here it is. And it's really easy. GoFundMe.com/freewildstar. So get there right now. We've done a pretty good job of raising money. We're up to about $2,800. A little bit of the story by your wife, Crystal, about what happened. And, oh, look, it's funny. Right here, somebody says, oh, I'm watching a live conversation between Nickolas Wildstar and Dan Fishman. So that's awesome. Glad to see that happening right now. And guys, this is one of the important things we do, because Nick's not fighting for him. He's fighting for us. And, it would probably be easier, right, to just say, you know what? I'm just going to take it. I'm going to walk away from the court case. I don't want to fight anymore. I want to spend any more money. But if you do that, we all suffer. And so I want to thank you. I'm happy for everybody who's donating. I want to be nice to see another few $100s come through while we're doing this show.
Yes, it's much needed.
I got to ask you a little bit about the guy who seems to be looking over your shoulder on our camera. Gavin Newsom, who likes to go out to eat at the French Laundry, which I just want to say, so back in the day, I was a .com engineer. I used to go out to Silicon Valley, and one time we went to the French Laundry. That place is insanely nice, insanely expensive, and nothing about it says when there's a pandemic on, it's exempt. It doesn't have to be immune from the rules. And so Gavin Newsom put all these rules on that said, people couldn't go to libraries. They couldn't eat to libraries. People couldn't go to restaurants. They couldn't eat indoors, anything like that. But then he put all those rules in place, and then he himself violated them, right? He went to go eat at the French Laundry.
Yeah, and he didn't think twice about it. The sad part was the only reason why he came out with a public apology was because he got caught. There was an investigative reporter that shared pictures of him inside the restaurant, because at first he pretty much dismissed it. Yep. But once the pictures came out and actually proved that he was in the restaurant, then he did a press conference and basically, gave this empty spiel
Yeah.
and ended it with, I need to practice what I preach.
Where he said, he didn't say, I'm sorry for what I did. He said, I'm sorry I got caught.
Exactly, basically. And the one thing about this dinner is that a lot of people are unaware that he was actually meeting with over a dozen people in this indoors in this restaurant where all restaurants are closed for indoor dining, but he was indoors. He was not wearing a mask. He was not socially distancing. All the rules that he's having imposed on the rest of the people of California. So, but at this dinner, he was actually meeting with a bunch of lobbyists, executives from a company that he actually hired to handle the rollout of the vaccine, which has been troublesome and a waste of money, hundreds of millions of dollars here in California. He also met with water company executives to basically butter up another deal for them to where they're able to provide water at an expensive rate here in California, where we have water droughts, etc. And he also met with medical representatives from the health department here. So why is he meeting with all of these officials for a private dinner and for a public affair?
Right.
So that just even more is proof to show you that there's some cronyism going on.
So he does that, and then that's not the end of it, right? There was a Thanksgiving scandal as well, was there not?
Well, yeah. I mean, with regards to all of these state officials, he was one of the first. But on Thanksgiving, he basically said for for everyone to stay away from family and friends, and if you have a gathering, that all of the activity needs to be done outdoors. Everything needs to be prepackaged. So if you serve dinner, they need to be in their own separate containers. The event can't last longer than 2 hours long. So he put all of these rules on everyone else of the state. Excuse me. Yet
That's
at
all
the
right.
same time, there were other state officials actually breaking those rules. I believe a mayor of Santa Cruz or a city official out there was caught at his house with more than a dozen people. Some city officials down in San Diego and Los Angeles, they were just pretty much all caught breaking these rules over the holiday period. So,
And it's funny because it points out, the real hypocrisy, that there's a lot of times where they say, okay, we've got rules that we expect everybody else to follow, and we're going to codify them, right? They're going to make them laws. They're fines, penalties, all that stuff. And then the officials themselves don't follow them. And the thing about it is, as libertarians, one of the things that we say all the time is, why make laws for things that you could ask people to do voluntarily? If you told everybody, we think this is the best thing for you to do, this is the safest thing for you to do, then we wouldn't have any of these problems. We wouldn't say, oh, you're violating your own rules or things like that, because people could say, I looked at my situation, I decided what was the safest thing to do, and we did what we thought was a safe thing to do. But instead, because they're going out there and because they're making laws, it's that's the part that's calling about it. So tell me a little bit about how the recall works in California, because I'm trying to think who's the last governor in California that wasn't recalled.
right? Well, one of the first governors here recalled was another Democratic governor. It was Governor Gray Davis. And when he was recalled, we replaced him with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Right.
Hopefully we don't make that same mistake again this time around. And
I don't think he's running, is he?
No, but
I mean, just as a quick aside,
representative of we the people.
Yeah, well, just as a quick aside, in his inaugural speech, Schwarzenegger gets up there and, in his best Terminator voice, he says, "We are facing the financial apocalypse." Well, if you're going to give me sound bites like that,
Right.
maybe I can accept you being governor. So probably it's not going to be Schwarzenegger. But then there's when that happened, when the recall election happened, how many people ran? It was like over 100 candidates ran in that first recall, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty much like a free-for-all. So you had tons of people running for governor then. You had a porn star. You had other
Mary Carey.
actors.
I don't know how I know that.
Yeah, you had all sorts of people run for office then. But like I said, because it was pretty much a spectacle, you had Arnold Schwarzenegger steal the scene with his superstardom. So he was elected governor. In this gubernatorial election, in this special election for the recall. So far, there hasn't been any celebrity, candidate that has stepped up. I believe Kanye West was talking about it when his bid for president failed. So since he is a resident of California,
well, and he has an established party, right? Kanye runs with the birthday party.
Yeah, exactly. And but right now, I think he got his hands full with this divorce and all sorts of other personal issues.
Sure.
So I think he should more so focus on that, get his life, in order first before he attempts to govern the people of California's lives.
So the fact that there's going to be that there's hundreds of candidates leads me to believe that getting on the ballot isn't that complicated. Can you tell me what's involved in getting on the ballot to run for governor in California?
Sure. Well, it is a process. I mean, don't get me wrong. You have to either pay the fine, which they always make you do, is pay to play. So in order for you to get on the ballot, it is about 4,500 plus, which doesn't come easy, especially these days during the pandemic when lots of people have lost their source of income and are living off their savings, like myself. So that money is going to be fundraised by the public or special interest groups. And most likely, of course, that's what's going to happen with him. He'll be able to get tons of money and funding from all of the unions and
the party, not to mention the fact that, he has been in office for so long. He's doled out a lot of political favors. Like you mentioned, all the people who, got to eat with him in a restaurant.
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure that if you get invited to go eat with the governor at the French Laundry, you're probably going to donate $1,000 to his campaign. Exactly. Yeah, or 10. Is 10 the cap in California?
For each individual, I think it's 10,500 or 15,000, something like that, the maximum per individual.
So
but
he's got a few
definitely contributing that max.
Right. So he just needs a few friends to get him on the ballot.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't have the cash, is there another way on, or is it only cash that gets you on?
Well, money gets you on, but it's the easiest way. I mean, the hard way is having to collect the signatures in lieu of that fine. I believe it's about 10 cents, probably 10 cents to 50 cents per signature. So do the math.
I would disagree with that. Having just run the national ballot access for president, we were paying, across the country, $4 a signature. So I would have to imagine that in California, it's going to be, much more expensive. I'm very aware that California is the most expensive media market. Although I guess, is there a geographic distribution? Can you get the signatures from anywhere? Like if you get all your signatures from Northern California, it's obviously going to be cheaper than getting it, or Northern and Eastern California, it's going to be cheaper than getting it from in LA.
You're able to collect all of the signatures from wherever you need be. It's just a matter of hitting that, certain amount.
So then let's talk a little bit. We had talked about this before, but for the people who aren't aware, all these people run, and there's going to be multiple Democrats probably and multiple Republicans in the race because California, Proposition 14, you have what's called the jungle primary, which I still think is just the dumbest name ever. I mean, right, what about it is a jungle? I don't know. But
For all that.
right, exactly. I like free for all. I like cage match primary. Something like that makes more sense to me than the jungle primary. But so there's going to be the jungle primary, going to be a lot of Democrats, a lot of Republicans, and hopefully they're going to be splitting each other's votes to some extent. Is that what happens in practice?
Yes. Well, the difference with the special election, the recall election, is, excuse me, Prop 14 wouldn't actually apply because it's winner takes all. So if Gavin Newsom is able to not be recalled, he'll be able to retain his seat as governor until the 2022 election, where then we'll have that cage match.
Oh, so I didn't understand that. So the recall hasn't actually passed yet.
No, the deadline is March 17th, which is Patty's Day this Wednesday.
Yep.
So after then, it'll be declared by the lieutenant governor if we actually meet the signature threshold, which is 1.5 million, which I think we'll be able to do since we have over 2.1 million at this point.
Yeah, my understanding is that the signature threshold has been matched, and like people have been through the signatures that they have and they validated. Lieutenant governor hasn't validated it yet, but journalists who have seen them said, yep, absolutely, there's enough valid signatures to get through there. So then once that happens, there's a recall election. There's a vote to recall him, or is just a flat out election? Who's the next governor, and he gets to run in that?
Well, on people's ballot, they'll have the option of one, would you like to recall Gavin Newsom? Yes or no? No matter which answer you choose on that first question, you are also given the option of two, which is if Gavin Newsom is recalled, who would you like to replace him? So people will get to vote yes or no on recalling Gavin Newsom, and then also get to choose who they would like to see replace him.
Well, that's very interesting. So in many ways, you are going to be allied with other candidates because all of you want to get the yes vote for to recall Gavin Newsom.
Exactly.
Have you heard anything about that yet? Any talk of any candidates working together to get the recall part passed?
No, actually, I've been one of those candidates out there, pounding the pavement to create alliances with these other candidates. Unfortunately, they're all just self-centered, thinking about themselves and, me, instead of thinking about we, the people. So all the candidates that I've reached out to so far have, pretty much denied that that opportunity for us to work together. I'm hoping Chris Carlson of the Green Party actually jumps into the race. When I ran in 2018, he was the Green Party candidate for governor, and him and I actually teamed up to campaign throughout the state and, get in debates and do interviews together, et cetera. So you actually brought up a great point. That would be a great opportunity for candidates to come together right now, go out and promote the recall itself, since it will benefit everybody, and then also at the same time introduce themselves as candidates. So we have had a debate already here in California for the recall. It was the Yes California gubernatorial debate.
Yeah.
And in that, they did bring up issues about the recall. And I'm pretty sure any gubernatorial debate between now and when this special election actually happens, that Newsom is going to be a matter of discussion in his failures and what we would do as governor to pick up where he left off.
Well, that's a really interesting thing. One of the things that People for Liberty has been really focused on right now is trying to make libertarians aware of the opportunities for coalition, chances for us to work with other people. And we get a lot of sort of wins out of that because we show people that, A, we're not as crazy as the Republicans and Democrats make us out to be. Right. Because if there is one thing that Republicans and Democrats always agree upon, it's do not let the libertarians succeed, because libertarian success means the end of the gravy train of money in politics. Yes. And so that's the one thing that they can agree upon. They want to keep getting paid for being political. But the other thing about it is that when we work in a coalition with other groups, and I've done this a couple times in things that I've done. So when I was in Massachusetts, I was the political director of the Libertarian Party of Massachusetts. We worked with Black Lives Matter because, we're all concerned about criminal justice reform. And
Right.
it's a really important thing. And, things like getting cameras on police officers and holding police officers accountable. And one of the big things that was happening a lot, I don't know if it's happening in California, but in Massachusetts, a lot of times police officer would get in trouble in his local town and they would say, okay, we're going to force him to resign, but we're not going to press any criminal charges. And then he would just become a police officer, one town over, no penalty or anything like that. And we wanted to make sure that didn't happen. And so that's a natural alliance for us. And the same thing for, there was a group that wanted to, even more than libertarians, they wanted to legalize cannabis. Natural alliance for us to work with them.
Exactly.
All these sort of things. Gun owners, all these things. And so here we've got this scenario where I think a lot of people can agree, Gavin Newsom has just got to go. He didn't make anything better in California, right? California was supposed to be, we've got all these hardcore implementations, stuff like that. We're not going to have a problem ending up like New York or ending up like Florida, but really California's numbers have been nothing special, right?
Not at all. You would think that our numbers would be better with us being one of the harshest states when it comes to imposing, protocols and procedures for safety for the coronavirus. But we have one of the highest amount of cases in the state of California. We also have a higher amount of deaths than some other states as well. And even with those amount of deaths, they don't warrant us being locked down for over a year now, because since this pandemic has been declared, there's been a little over 50,000 people that have died. Of course, right. That's unfortunate, since one life loss is, an awful
Terrible.
loss.
Yep.
But at the same time, we have over 44 million people here in California. So that's less than 1.5% of our entire population. So again, it doesn't warrant us all being forced to stay inside of our homes when there hasn't been a high mortality rate.
Well, and when you look at, my favorite example is Tennessee. Tennessee has never had any mandates, any lockdown, and their numbers aren't particularly worse. Now, it's not like people in Tennessee are saying, you know what, it's not liberty unless you can lick the elevator buttons. They're being cautious. They're being smart about it. They just didn't have to have government come in and tell them to do all those things. And in many ways, that works better, because I mean, this is me. This is my personal thing. But I wrote an article about this once. I got mad at a ketchup packet because it said, open this side. And I'm like, you're not the boss of me. I'm opening it on the other side. What are you going to do? Ketchup packet. And so, but I think a lot of Americans are like that. If you tell them they have to do something, they're like, oh, I'm not going to do it. If they say this is the best thing to do, but do what you want, like, oh, I'm going to do the best thing. We would have done a lot better, I think, across the country if that had been our response to COVID. If we'd said, you know what, wearing masks isn't for you, it's for your grandma. It's for your friend's grandma.
If government had that response, then people most likely would have been like, no, I'm going to do what I want. But since government was like, you must do this,
exactly,
like, I must do that. So It's sad that, in America, where you have so many independent thinkers and this free mindset, a lot of people still think they must follow suit with this whole groupthink aspect of what's going on, and not exercise any common sense at all. I mean, what happened to the flu all of a sudden? What happened to heart disease? What happened to all sorts of other ailments and life-threatening diseases where they cause death, and our lives weren't suppressed or changed in any way because of it? We were just told to proceed with caution.
It is interesting to see, the flu numbers are incredibly low right now. And
Just
me personally, I think it's because of all the precautions that we're taking. And that scares me because I don't want government to think, oh, you know what? We should keep this up, that this is what we're going to do to keep people safe, et cetera, et cetera. When in reality, there's, the CDC has said, and I know controversial organization for some people, but the CDC has said something for a long time that I think people are more conscious of right now. Washing your hands on a regular basis does more to keep you from getting sick than anything else that you can think of. And yet, up until before COVID, right, the numbers were really low. Less than 25% of people were washing their hands on a regular basis. And now the number is something like 80% of people are washing their hands on a regular basis.
Well, who's providing those numbers, though?
It's ad hoc polling, and chances are, if you ask me in a mall if I wash my hands, I might say yes. That's an excellent point. Especially though, if you catch me going into a restaurant, you wash your hands today? Yes, of course I wash my.
Right. Well, I think if in general, the majority of people did exercise good hygiene. I mean, or else we'd be living in a lot more filthier environment. That's just the fact of the matter. But to say that now all of a sudden people are washing their hands more and, being more cleanly is a bit of an exaggeration, because there wasn't any much polling done then to see and compare and have actual facts to compare it with. So it's a bit out of proportion, I believe, for them to continue imposing these lockdowns.
I'm not saying that we should have the lockdowns, but I do think, at least, in my personal basis, I see people so much more cautious using hand sanitizer out in public, things like that, than I ever saw before. So
that's funny, because I still see guys piss at the damn urinal and then walk out of the bathroom and they'll use a napkin to grab the doorknob and then walk out.
Exactly. Well,
at least they're not spreading the germs, or whatever the case may be.
P.T. Barnum famously said, nobody got poor by underestimating the intelligence of people in the United States. You can't. We have to accept that, guys, in terms of where our hygiene is, we set the low bar. And but as a group, we're not great about hygiene. So even if we were just to get a little bit better, but so all that stuff, California, though, it's got more issues than just COVID too, right? There is you guys have got some crazy taxes.
Yeah. Out of this world taxes, like the highest in the nation taxes, which is why, as governor, I plan on eliminating many of those taxes. And the people of California definitely could use a financial reprieve right now more than ever before. It's sad that we're still being taxed for our public schools, yet our kids can't even go to school. We're being taxed for our roads, yet there aren't being any road improvements. We're getting taxed for cleaning up our neighborhoods when there hasn't been any efforts to clean up our neighborhoods. So it's sad that we, again, are just paying so much in taxes and not seeing much of a return for it. So I will be, again, terminating all of those using the term.
What is income tax at in California right now?
I believe it's about 16% per individual.
Wow. That's crazy.
It is.
And then
higher, depending
you also pay really high prices on gasoline,
right?
Your gas tax. When's the last time you bought a gallon of gas, and how much is it?
I think earlier this week, and it was about $4.30.
Whoa! Shut the front door. I was mad because here in Maryland it went up to $2.50 a gallon for regular. And like today was the first day I went out and I saw it. I'm like, I'm not paying that.
It's California, man. $2.50 is the regular.
Wow.
The normal day. Then it just scales up from there. And right now we're seeing a push happen to inflate that price for gasoline. Which is another thing I want to do, is cut excise taxes like the gas tax and utility taxes, etc. Just so again we can save some of that money and keep it in our pockets where it belongs instead of it being taken by the government officials like him.
Right. And then, one of the other things about it, something that, people don't realize is that California has, a lot of industry that actually is being subsidized by the government, by state government to give sort of unfair advantages across the way. And so, like, I know there's this tremendous agricultural business in the Imperial Valley, but the Imperial Valley used to be a desert. It's being watered, it's being irrigated through taxpayer money to grow food there. One of those, perfect examples of taxpayer money going to benefit certain people in certain industries rather than, a basic keep your money for yourself. People know how to spend their money best, that sort of thing. Let me ask you another thing. One of the things people have said all along is that California, we were talking a little bit about water. They say, oh, California would have this incredible drought and people would die if it weren't for the government managing the water. But that's not true, is it?
It's actually the opposite. The reason why you have a lot of farmers out here upset and us experiencing periodical droughts is because of the regulation being imposed by government. I spoke with a business owner who has a tomato company, and he's one of the largest tomato manufacturers in the entire world. Okay, and his plant, his farm, is here in California, and he was saying that basically he was fined and had to fight the government over them charging him for his water usage to grow the tomatoes and have the tomatoes processed so they can make ketchup and other type of products. And he's like, what do you want to do? Fine me for using the money so I can make food, or stop using water and we make less food? Right. I would think we need more food, and we all need food to eat. Of course, we all need water to make that happen. So I think, if anything, it should be wrong for companies like Nestle to come into the state of California, which is also here, and siphon off hundreds of thousands of gallons of water, bottle it up, and sell it right back to us. That's just insane. So what I'll be doing is fining those companies for their excessive use and, level the playing field to where some of these smaller businesses have the opportunity to continue to grow as a small farm instead of selling out to these major corporations. A lot of the farms here are owned by Prudential, owned by Hancock, these two companies. And California provides over half of the nation's fruit and vegetables. So if we want to make sure that our farming industry is able to flourish and is not being governed and dictated by government and special interest groups, then we need to make sure it is truly a free market, which is what I'd be doing, is removing some of those regulations that prevent it from doing such. And speaking of water, more government red tape.
Yeah.
What I would like to do to solve the water crisis is actually start building these atmospheric water generators. You can look it up. These AWGs do exist. And we can put them along the coastline, and they basically create water out of thin air. Okay. Take the water molecules from the sky, make it drinking water coming out of the machine. So it would be a better way for us to create water, a less expensive way, as well as a way for us to eliminate having to experience droughts and water shortages.
Yeah. I've talked about this beforehand. I actually am a native Californian. I was born in Berkeley, California in 1967, which people think explains everything about me. But California's had water issues for forever. Right. And the idea that government is going to solve the problem when they haven't in the last 60 years is pretty laughable. And in fact, you see the best solutions that you see for water are things that people implementing voluntarily amongst themselves.
Right. It's not that we don't have enough water. It's just that the water that we have is being controlled.
Let's circle back around to the court case that you are fighting for all of us. Are there any dates coming forward in the future? Anything that people should be aware of? Is there an appeal date?
You brought up the GoFundMe because I'm in the appeal process now. And what's sad is you're only given 30 days to fight
That's
these
crazy.
charges. But yet I was prosecuted for years. This started back in 2017, and here we are in 2021, just now wrapping things up.
Yep.
And I'm only told that I have 30 days to file an appeal and contest these charges. So that's exactly what I'm doing this week. Right now is shopping for an attorney. I've already filed the notice of appeal. So I just need to find an attorney to actually follow through and make sure that it is completed. So thank you for throwing up the GoFundMe, because I'm trying to fundraise $15,000. I found out the minimal for a good appellate attorney is about $20,000.
Wow.
So if I can hit the 15, hopefully I can find someone that's willing to take that and get this going for me. But I'm going to fight this out as long as it takes, if I'm able to. I mean,
right.
Who knows if it's going to be within the year or a few years even. I mean,
right.
I've heard stories of appeals taking 10 years or so. So it's sad that it can be drawn out for so long, and we have to keep paying money towards this process.
Right, exactly. That's it, that there's a price tag on justice. And so, one of those things where it's important that everybody get involved, because we can't let this be a case that we don't fight because people aren't willing to pay for it.
Right.
And the justice system is deliberately set up so that it is more than, I don't want to say more than one honest man can afford, but it is more than the average person can afford to fight when the wheels of justice are stacked against you. So, you know, if you're a millionaire, of course you can fight for it.
Yeah.
And if you're a regular person, you got to have help from other people who want to see justice. So this show, we're talking about that. GoFundMe.com/free Wildstar.
Yeah.
We want to clarify, this is to set Wildstar free. You don't get a free Wildstar coming to your house. But if you were to come out to the California convention, we'd probably see you there. Have you guys had your convention yet this year?
No, it's coming up in the next month or so. It's going to be in Visalia. So
awesome. So that's
what happens.
That's good stuff. I once again, I want to thank you, Nickolas, for being on here, for fighting for all of us, and giving us a place to rally around too, because I think libertarians in general right now are trying to find somebody who's really fighting the good fight. We got a couple of elected officials, some in California, some in Wyoming, but seeing somebody who's right there actively impacting our rights, because this case affects everybody in California and potentially even at a larger scale, the idea that you're allowed to record yourself. So I appreciate you fighting for us. I appreciate everything that you're doing in terms of getting ready to make sure that Gavin Newsom doesn't get reelected governor, and, going out there and trying to build those coalitions. That's an important thing too. Thanks so much for being on the show again. Always a pleasure to have you. And I look forward to the next broadcast where we say all the charges have been dropped and you are a completely free man.
Yes. And then all of the people of California can make sure that they're not having their constitutional rights infringed upon.
That would be amazing.
That's what this is all about, So thank you so much for promoting the ideal of helping me out, because it is going to be a victory for all of we, the people of California, were I to be successful. So please, everyone, join in on the effort. As Fishman said, check out the website, GoFundMe.com, free Wildstar. Make a contribution. I am running for governor of California. I have a debate this Saturday, and there will be more coming up over the next few weeks. So check out my website, wildstar2022.com. Please join that effort as well, because I'm a grassroots candidate and need all the help I can get. Okay. It is a matter of us fighting against the superpowers here in California, and I'm pretty sure they're going to be pouring in tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars into this special election to make sure that someone such as myself isn't given an opportunity to serve. So let's please counter that how we can. There we go. Perfect. There's the website. Please check it out. Wildstar2022.com. You can click that donate button or that pledge card that he just minimized, or where it says contact, I believe.
Right here. There's a contact link up the top.
Yeah.
If they go to wildstar2022.com, that's the perfect place to find out more about you too.
Yes, I got my social media there, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, so you can connect with me also. And my YouTube channel, which I ask you all to subscribe to, has over nearly 30,000 subscribers and over 8 million views. So check out my videos. I do my best to make sure I capture as much public events as possible, whether it's protest or, debates, rallies, whatever, and make those videos available on my YouTube. So definitely check that out.
That's awesome. Well, thanks again, my friend, for being here. Look forward to hearing from you again in the future. And thanks, everybody, for turning into the Liberty Lunch Power Hour. My name is Dan Fishman. I'm Executive Director of the People for Liberty. You can find out more for us at peopleforliberty.org. Thanks, Nick.
Pleasure.